Hello, I'm Kim Sauer for What's New in Electronics TV here at Productronica 2019. I'm joined by a beautiful panel today, and we're going to be talking about the skill sets of the future, the employees and talents of the future. And with me today is Michael Ford from AEGIS. We've got Ridhi Kantelal from Arch. Kantelal, yeah, you can say it probably afterwards. From Arch, MB Allen from KIC, and Michelle Ogihara, SEIKA. Thank you very much for joining the panel today, and we'll get straight in there. So there's a lot happening, and has been for a number of years in the industry, where we've been talking about Industry 4.0 and automation. It's all about big data, digitization. That surely will have an impact on the type of skill sets we need in this industry, and might also create some worries in the existing workforce. So let's first touch on what you think are the key drivers towards a changing workforce of the future.
The first kind of trend that we're seeing are, the machine vendors who are here. You go up to the booths, you have a look at the machines, and it's not really the machines that you're looking at anymore. It is kind of the software technology that they've built into those machines that use the data internally to create value. So, okay, that sounds like a sales pitch, but what it really means is that people who are using the machines don't need any longer to be experts in the technology of those machines. The technology is built inside. And so when you reel off all of these words about digital information and clouds and all of the other stuff, again, a lot of that technology is built into solutions. So people need not be afraid that we're talking about a huge change of paradigm of the kind of people we need, like thinking we have software programmers, developers, and people who are highly trained in computer skills. There needs to be a kind of a basic understanding, a basic kind of appreciation about how data works, how value is created, so that they can pick the best equipment, they can design their best practices, and utilize the software tools most effectively. That level of skill is really accelerated by this move, whereas the specific machine intelligence or even software, not so much. You have to trust your suppliers and trust that they're all working together to deliver that value for you.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I'm going to follow up on that, and I'd say that I do still think there is a lot of value in understanding machines, but it's really about, I think there's two things that have happened, like the convergence of IT and OT has meant that there's a need of skilled people who understand both how operations work as well as IT. And two is the point about data. There's a lot of, with the Industry 4.0 and the evolving manufacturing industry, there's a need of, there's a lot of data created, and there's a need of understanding data engineering. We see data engineering as a skill that is more and more need. There's always going to be need for data scientists, there's always going to be need for software engineers and all these different skills, but really about being able to understand how to combine all the data to make it work for your operations is a key.
Mm-hmm. And now actually over to the machine vendors here. What's your view on what Michael and Ridhi have been saying?
I think you're absolutely correct. It does have a lot to do with the data, and I think that is a different skill set. One of the main goals of Industry 4.0 Smart Factory is to make the factory more efficient, to make things operate more efficiently, to be able to produce a higher quality product with less errors, with less defects, at a significantly lower cost. And so utilizing the data, useful data, and you have the data collection, you're utilizing that information to get better. And so the people are still the same people. What you're trying to do is you're trying to eliminate some of that downtime, which is costly, and obviously to get better product out the door more quickly and more efficiently. Mm-hmm. So there's still people involved in all of those aspects of it. So I don't think that will have as much of a significant change as people think. You mentioned the factory, the lights out factory. I have seen that actually in operation once, but there were still people that are required, especially if something does go wrong or there's an action item that's needed.
Mm-hmm.
I absolutely agree that coming from the hardware side, there's still people that need to actually run the machines, actually have to utilize and understand all of the data that's collected and to improve the process. But my biggest concern, which has been a big concern of, I think, our industry as a whole, is to really attract the young people. And Ridhi and I have been discussing this, and there is a gap of very senior, experienced people on the line who have been running our industry and manufacturing process and S&P process all of this time. And then because of the economy or manufacturing going overseas, that the industry has changed such that we're not hiring, or we're pretty much, everyone is wearing so many hats, and it's all depending on fewer people for a mass amount of more process control. And so it's very difficult right now to find young people who are really even know that we have so much still to offer in our industry, and keep them attracted. And I think it's still people who run the machines, who collect the data, and who constantly are keeping aware of process control. And if you're not understanding the process of manufacturing or being on the line itself, then what good does all of this information provide us?
Yeah.
I'd just like to pick up on that, because I agree with you that the younger perspective, people who come in with a different kind of expectation and skills and experience are really needed. And I'd like to make a shout out to the IT people, because IT people have been a part of manufacturing for many years. They are the ones who are responsible for taking the data and making sense of it, making value. And we need to differentiate between those, which is usually a small group of people who will continue to do that job at a higher level perhaps, and the guys who are actually running production, who aren't really going to be trained in digital data collection, etc., because that will just be happening automatically. So they themselves will simply be doing what they're doing with a less skill in terms of machine technology, a greater skill in the use of the data that has been processed and fed back to them in the form of KPIs, which they are now able to pinpoint and use to improve the performance of the lines.
I agree, but also disagree to some extent, where I do think there is, yes, you get the KPIs, you get all this, but there is still a lot of value that only, if you're, as a provider and a machine vendor, we understand the machines, but only the manufacturer really understand the whole process, right? So I think there's an element of, and there's a need of people who can play with the data themselves and understand, where this data is coming from, how to analyze it to make it work. And there is an element of, technology making it a lot easier nowadays. There's a lot of infrastructure in place to allow and empower the operator, the analysts, operators, and manufacturers to be able to do that themselves. So, yes and no.
Yeah, you have to consider all the different kinds of manufacturing. I've seen an actual case, for example, where a very small company has introduced something like CFX, for example, and they will play with the data themselves, exactly as you said, and they will create their own metrics. And that's absolutely fine. Then you get to the level where you want to go one step ahead, and you need to create the contextual value of that data. And so solutions like ours, they will provide that context. And the data is now not the raw data anymore. It is actually data that has been processed and is presented in a way that's set up by people, as you said, who are understanding the manufacturing flow. We have to remember that manufacturing is a very lean process. This kind of work is done by the people once or twice, or maybe on a continuous basis, but it's not something that everybody does every day. The focus still has to be on manufacturing. So, it depends in different circumstances, maybe in early adoption, absolutely right. People are wanting to see what they can get. But the fundamentals still continue to be followed.
I think there's so many variations when we talk about automation. There's variations all over the factory. So there may be different levels that people will start to implement some type of automation. I think there's also a fear of taking on a project that's enormous. Just because I want to have a smart factory, and that doesn't have to be that way. And so you can take bits and pieces of that, go through automation for various places within your manufacturing process, and then learn from that, learn what information is important to you, and then start to implement it where you are taking advantage of that optimization, the expertise that you're learning from the information that you're gathering, and make it useful. I think people are somewhat hesitant to even consider it because it seems like it's a tremendous endeavor. Things like CFX allow people to start not necessarily across the whole manufacturing platform, but in small places, to start to understand which of the data is important to me, which can I use, and from there, how do I want to use it? And of course, that is going to still be people that are making those decisions. What's best for my factory, for my process, and for my customer, which is really the end result. You know, if I can provide my customer with information to show how well I'm producing product, that's going to be the most important part. And so I think just getting away from the sort of big picture and understanding that I can break it down is very, very important.
And we're always talking about that big picture, that ultimate huge lights out factory with no human interface at all. But actually, a lot of the industry isn't that. It's small manufacturing businesses that probably don't have the resources to implement that full scale automation.
In
Or
the end of the
understand the
day, so-
benefits. I'm sorry. Or understand the benefits of why should I do
Yeah.
this now?
Yeah.
Exactly. As in the end of the day, it's about ROI, right?
Yeah.
You,
Yeah.
you know, there's, when we go to customers and when we're talking to people, manufacturers, it's always about, okay, what are the real biggest pain points for you right now? It's not about, you should have AI and ML, and it's really about, okay, what are the things that are having issues, and okay, this is the data, this is how we can help you solve that problem using technology.
I think, though, that manufacturing fundamentally, even with all this new technology, hasn't changed a lot. We still have the exact same demands: on-time delivery, zero defects for quality, lean supply chain to reduce the cost of materials. These are pain points that we know pretty much everybody has. I think the thing that we bring to the equation is we can relate this new kind of data opportunity that's derived from data from machines. We understand the manufacturer's business goals. What we need to do is to help join the two together such that they can bring the value from the data. That's what we add, I think.
So I think another trend that we're seeing, and I think is going to affect the skill sets in the future, is mass customization. Where you have, it's no longer about setting it up once and, keeping it running for years, right? So, and it brings its own challenges, right? It's not replacing people. It's as much as now you have to have a data-driven approach to utilize your people to be able to do it efficiently. Otherwise, your scrap rates are just going to be too high.
Yeah.
And we see this across, not just in electronics, across all industries, like Nike and Adidas, they are making personalized trainers. You can go online and you make it, but it's still using big factories to do it. And I think that brings in its own unique challenges on technology that you need, and people who understand these technologies, like 3D printing, but also data-driven approaches. And it's a shift in mindset. You still need to understand operations, but you need to understand how you can use data to make decisions in a different, more automatic way.
Sure. And Michelle, you made a great point that, we're trying to attract new young people into the industry. And to me, it sort of seems as though everything we're talking about here is what young people today have grown up with. It's intuitive to them. They were born with a mobile phone by their ear, nearly. And they understand data. They know how to use it. And I think, we spoke in one of the Winnie TV panels about our industry, and I believe the word dinosaurs was mentioned. And those dinosaurs, we know they are no longer around, and that's the way we're going. So, but therefore, if we need those young people that have those skills, yet we're not attracting them into the industry yet, what do we need to do?
Okay. I have strong opinions about this. I mean, there's a lot of conversation about manufacturing not being sexy. I don't think that's true. I love manufacturers, always have, right? I think there's an element of not knowing what that, there's a perception that if you go into manufacturing, you start a job as, field engineer, that's it. That's your life. right? But the reality is that I think everyone here they've changed skill sets. They've changed up. They've gone from product to marketing to sales. It doesn't matter, but it's still within manufacturing, and you still need that baseline, right? So I think that's one reason. I think as a millennial, I can say. Millennials don't really want to be stuck doing just one thing for the rest of their lives. And I think showcasing that and how data and how technology is combination of that and what the breadth of opportunities out there within manufacturing are high, I think is a key point.
Oh,
Yeah.
this is absolutely right, because the kind of people who we see in manufacturing at the moment are the dinosaurs. They may forgive me one day, but there are people who have. I'm one too. But there are people
Young
who
and
have
attractive dinosaurs. Still.
vast experience, vast know-how, and the younger people coming in is almost like a threat, because their skills are almost becoming obsolete now as the know-how is built into the machines and processes and data collection techniques. The younger people bring a whole fresh perspective on this, and it's a perspective that the existing people do not have. So it's absolutely essential that right now we start to bring in the people with those perspectives, work alongside the
There's
existing
something
people.
to be said. Go ahead.
I know we had this discussion yesterday, and to Michelle's point, it's very true. There has to be knowledge, there has to be openness about what the opportunities are within our industry, and I think that's very restrictive.
Yeah.
We talked about that across the world. You have small towns and small villages where there isn't an awful lot of opportunities, and so there isn't awareness either. But to that point, with Michelle saying we're looking for youth, that's absolutely true. But there has to be something exciting for them, and
Yeah.
There
when we
has
look
to
at
be a balance.
customization,
There
absolutely.
has to be a balance because you do need the experience, you do need the information, you need the training, and I think that the EMS and the manufacturers do a wonderful job in-house. However, there's still a lack of people coming in because there isn't enough marketing or information out there attracting the young people to come into this sector of industry. And I think we have to do a much better job. I know that the SMTA has initiatives and programs in place with the young professionals and student programs that they have, the IEEE, the STEM program initiatives. But I think we do need to have a better, to make our industry much more sexier to appeal to, the wide, very intelligent millennials and young people coming in right now. Make it more exciting. And I think that's something that we need to work harder at.
So I would just like to add to that I think that's true, but there is if I'm going to reverse the question, I think there's another skill set that's been missing a little bit where, I don't know, we were talking about this yesterday and today about how there's a gap in ages. There's a lot of people who are almost retiring right now, and then there's like a gap of maybe 10, 20 years, and there's a lot of people, 40 and younger. And that, I think, has resulted, I think there's a skill set of, the people who are older to learn how to communicate and work with these millennials, I think there's, I think, like, I personally know and I value a lot of, the experience that, comes with being in an industry for, a long time. And I think there is an element of like, how do you combine that, right? How can
There
the
needs
people,
to be more mentorship.
Yeah,
in
and how can
place.
the senior people be more open to the ideas and innovation that the younger generations bring, and the younger generations, how can they be open and to the experience that comes with being in the industry for long.
And I think actually, sorry, MB, but I think I know you're passionate about it, and it's very close to your heart, and you do a lot of work in that sort of direction. And you just mentioned mentorship, right? I think it's the responsibility of not just the associations around us, the groupings, but each individual manufacturer, software supplier, to actually provide the mentorship to the next generations to come into the industry.
I think with
are
some
we
of the
doing enough there?
automation, when we go, as Michael was talking about earlier, as we go into more automation, we're sort of venturing into a different area associated to manufacturing that wasn't in the past. And so that in itself is bringing a new type of technology into our industry, which will also in turn bring a new different set of people and a different skill set. And I think that skill set is very appropriate for the millennials because this is what they're learning. This is what they're doing on a daily basis. Michael, you mentioned that the other day, that they're on their phones, they're looking at things, they're inventing things, and the creativity is what we need for this automation part of the process. And I think that in itself will also attract some new, younger people, much more so than the past.
So I think the overall message is that, colleagues that we work with in the future, we're going to have a larger array of ideas, and we're going to have loads and loads of discussions. We're going to see, the new wave, the new generation meet the older generation. And I think the message is we have to listen, because there are a lot of brilliant ideas that the younger people are going to bring in. We must not just continue the way we are. Let's listen, and each case by case by case, we're going to see the adoption of tools and machines, technologies together, and we're going to then build what works for each manufacturing sector.
That's absolutely right, because we're all talking about innovation. Innovation is that key word, and we are, as an industry, involved in innovation by the end product, which is exciting in itself, but we're also innovative within the industry. And I think the innovation, creativity is embedded in that new generation that's up and coming. Now, I've just got a sign that we're running out of time, and I do want to open up to the floor for some possible questions. If there is anybody that does have a question for the panel, just raise your hand. If not, I'm sure the panel will be sticking around just straight after the panel discussion for any questions you might have one-on-one. So if there are no questions, then I'd like to thank my panel for participating. It was very interesting. I think we could go on and on about the subject and solve it. But again, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.